All right, welcome back to lecture two. And if you have not yet watched the second TED Talk, please watch that TED Talk before you start on this lecture. It'll definitely, um, things in this lecture will make a whole lot more sense if you've watched that TED Talk. The TED Talk is entitled Skills for Healthy Romantic Relationships. However, I think that these skills are probably very, very important for all relationships. So, and I'm gonna kind of approach it that way. But I thought this TED Talk was excellent. Um, one of the things that was mentioned in this TED Talk and the previous one was this idea that, for the most part, we don't actually get taught how to have a healthy relationship. And a lot of us probably are not taught what the characteristics of a healthy relationship are. Um, and I feel pretty sure that a lot of us are never taught, well, what skills do I actually need to develop, or what skills do I need to grow in order to be able to function in a healthy way within a relationship. And so, I think this is just, this is excellent stuff. I look back, on my life, and I really wish that when I was young, probably, uh, very early high school, that someone had given me this information. But for some reason, just most of us, I don't think we get it. And if by chance you have, um, that's amazing. So, and I want to also stress, there's a difference between um, intellectually knowing this stuff and and actually then being able to do it in relationships. Some of us might kind of experience that. We actually know what is healthy and what isn't, but we're just not able to actually do it. And so I think this information can really be helpful in terms of us beginning to understand what we need to do within ourselves, how we need to grow, so we can function in a healthy way in a relationship. And the TED Talk, actually, one of the things that came out of the TED Talk that I thought was very interesting was this idea of romantic competence. And I'm also going to just toss this in. I think it could also be called relationship competence. Um, how it gets defined in the TED Talk is, it's how competent, how able are you to function in a relationship. And this says the ability to function adaptively across all aspects or areas of the relationship process. So the idea that's presented is this: in order for you to actually have romantic competence or relationship competence, um, these skills, there are three of them, become very, very important. Okay, so these skills, they're important because they're going to help you make good decisions and also help you engage in adaptive and healthy behaviors within relationships. Um, they're going to reduce the likelihood that you perhaps end up in a relationship that's unhealthy for you. And the three skills that were identified are right here at the bottom: insight, mutuality, which that should be a familiar word from the first lecture. We talked about, or I talked about, relationships should have this interdependent kind of mode The dynamic should be interdependent, and that mutuality is a strong part of that interdependence. And then the third skill, emotion regulation. So these are the three that we really want to be developing, so that we can actually create, enter into, and enjoy healthy relationships. So let's look at this first one, insight. And with insight, how it gets defined is the ability to understand yourself and your partner or your potential partner. And I would just say the ability to understand yourself and friends or family members, or maybe any relationship partner, um, and understand the causes and consequences of your behavior and learn from your mistakes. So, kind of the way I would like to sum up insight is this way: do you know yourself? Have you invested time to really develop that relationship with yourself? Do you know what makes you tick? Do you know how you can sometimes behave in ways that aren't very beneficial? Do you understand why you do that? Have you learned from your mistakes? Do you correct those behaviors so that it doesn't play out in the future the way it maybe has in the past? Um, you know, with social and emotional wellness, there is a lot of overlap with topics. With this particular topic, insight, I look at this as being really one aspect of emotional wellness. Um, I sometimes think of emotional wellness as being very focused on the relationship we have with ourselves, and social wellness being very focused on the relationships we have with others. And what this is suggesting is that we first need to develop this insight, um, this awareness of ourselves, this knowing of ourselves. Um, and before we can actually enter into a healthy relationship. So, I think this is really a great piece of wisdom. So, um, with insight, and this is kind of another part of this TED talk that I really appreciated. It actually identified, when you develop these three skills, what each skill will allow you to be able to do in relationships. And let's just look at this list. Um, when you have developed this skill of insight, when you've come to really know yourself and really develop that relationship with yourself, well, you're going to know who you are, you're going to know what you need, and you're also going to have a better understanding of why you act the way you do. And wow, this is really important. It's, pretty foundational in terms of being able to actually get along with others and develop relationships with others. Um, with insight, you're going to be able to anticipate the positive and negative consequences of particular relationship choices. So, you're going to know, if you spent time with yourself and come to know yourself, you're going to know what relationship choices might be most healthy for you, which ones might have positive consequences, which ones are likely to have negative consequences. With insight, you'll actually learn from your mistakes, and this learning from your mistakes is going to help you make better choices in the future. Um, you're going to have a much better understanding of what kind of person or what kind of people will make good friends for you. and what types of relationships will be right for you. And notice it doesn't say which friends or which relationships will be good or bad. It's about which ones will be right for you. Okay. Also, when you have insight, you're going to know a little more um, with regard to how you tick. And this is going to really help us keep things in perspective, rather than maybe going off the deep end about things. Okay. Also, with insight, you'll be able to think more clearly about your decisions and your actions. That that perspective is going to be, I think, key with this. And also, this is, I think, just another huge benefit of taking the time to develop this insight. You're going to be much more likely to maintain self respect. And on top of that, this commitment to your needs, even when difficult things happen in your relationship. So, what I see within this area of insight is that it's about spending time in self-reflection, getting to know yourself, developing a really solid sense of self-respect. And you might also say self-esteem. Also, feeling as if you have worth, feeling as if your needs are important, caring enough about yourself that you want to make good choices for yourself. This component is, in my opinion, all about developing a relationship with oneself. So, this particular researcher, and you got a little information about what she does and how she's um, come to these conclusions. That's all within the TED Talk. But my kind of take on this is that this is really, really important. Um, and again, it's a piece. It's one of the pieces or the skills that we need to develop in order to be ready to participate in a healthy relationship. Okay, so the second skill that says needs to be developed is the skill of mutuality. And mutuality, how it gets defined is over here it says the ability to recognize that both you and it says potential partner, but it could also, again, it could be friends, family members. So this ability to recognize that both you and the other have needs and that both sets of needs matter. And you recognize the desire to maximize the likelihood that both sets of needs will get met. So, in other words, you're clear that you individually, as an individual, you have needs, your partner has needs, both. Both of those both of those sets of needs matter. It's not just my needs matter, or it's not just their needs matter. No one's needs are necessarily more important than the other. And there's this desire to make choices, to communicate in ways, to interact in ways so that the likelihood of both people getting their needs met is increased. So this is cool stuff. So if we're able to develop this particular skill or this particular ability, this is how it can then play out in our relationships. So with mutuality, you'll be able to know how to communicate your needs in a clear, direct way that optimizes or increases the chances of those needs getting met. Now, in order to do this, what's also happened is you've developed the ability to be assertive, to speak up on your behalf. And that assertiveness can come out of that growth that happens within the skill of insight. When we really respect ourselves, we'll be more inclined to speak up and express those needs. Okay, so with mutuality, you'll be able to actually be willing to meet your partner's needs. And of course, that is if the needs are reasonable, fair, etc. And in healthy relationships, hopefully they are. Okay, and once again, with mutuality, you'll be able to factor both sets of needs into decisions that you make about your relationship. So both people's needs matter. So, this is great. And, here's an example that I thought was a good one of mutuality. It says, I know we're different when it comes to planning things. I like to plan ahead, and you like to be spontaneous. Let's find a way to plan some things and leave some weekends to just do whatever we feel like in the moment. Okay. So so anyway, what's going on here is we'll just say it's like a partner relationship, and obviously there are a couple of different styles here. One person likes to plan. The other person is a little more like me, likes to just get up and see which way the wind's blowing. And so what's been decided is that both people's needs are important. And so when we're planning our weekends, we're going to do our best to meet both individuals' needs. In some cases, we'll plan ahead. And in other cases, or other weekends, in this case, we're just going to leave things open and see what we feel like. So that I think is a really good example of honoring needs and making decisions that will result in both people's needs being respected. Okay, so this third skill that, this particular researcher says that we need to really develop before we'll be able to function, well in a healthy relationship is emotion regulation. And what that means is, over here, the ability to regulate emotions in response to relationship relevant experiences. So I think to explain this a little more clearly, it does help to look at this next piece. If I'm able to regulate my emotions, um, how does this play out in a relationship? What does it look like? What will I be able to do? And here, this is a pretty good list. If I am able to regulate my own emotions, I'm going to be able to keep calm or keep calmer when I'm upset about things. Another thing is I'll be able to tolerate uncomfortable feelings, or you could also think unpleasant feelings rather than acting impulsively on them. So if I can regulate my emotions, I would be able to just sit with some discomfort, and that discomfort might just be not knowing something versus act out or be impulsive somehow. And here are a few more. I'll be able to keep things that happen in the relationship in perspective. And again, this is, low drama. Okay, I'll be able to think more clearly about the decisions that I make, and I'll be able to think more clearly about the actions that I take. Okay, and some of these are repeated. I'll be able to maintain a sense of self-respect and commitment. So, emotion regulation, I think really the two key ones here, um, there are three really that are pretty key, is I can actually be with emotions that aren't that are unpleasant, or maybe I can be with emotions that are uncomfortable, and I have the ability to be with them versus act out. I can stay calm when things feel upsetting to me. Um, this means I'm going to be less likely to do things that I might later regret. And just in general, I can keep things in perspective. So, I think that this was just a really excellent TED Talk, and it brought up some skills that, I like the idea that these are skills that we can develop. I think it helps us focus more so on, what we can do, what we perhaps want to grow, so that our relationships end up feeling more fulfilling, so that our relationships are more meaningful, and certainly so that our relationships actually are healthy for us. So remember these three: insight, mutuality, and emotion regulation. And I think that wraps up lecture number 2. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will talk to you soon.